Hi guys, so by this point you would have watched my mini video on how to save your Adobe Audition audio file, your podcast episode, as an MP3, and you also would have followed the instructions to create your very own SoundCloud account. So this is my SoundCloud account that I've created to give you an illustration. So I've created the account in the name that I would have for the podcast show, so the Digital Content Creation Podcast. I've uploaded my vector artwork that I've created using Adobe Illustrator. So I've got my podcast artwork here. Now do bear in mind that SoundCloud crops the artwork in a circle, so you may have to alter your design if you want it to look really good on SoundCloud. So my SoundCloud account and profile is all set up, so now I'm ready to upload my MP3 file, my podcast episode, so that it's published as an actual podcast episode, and I can distribute the link. So if I wanted to promote my podcast to have it embedded on websites, for the assessment you guys need to grab a link so you can put it in your podcast planning report document that you submit to Moodle. So you'll be putting the link on the header page. So I'll walk you through that in just a moment. So let's get on with uploading our MP3 file to SoundCloud. So as you can see down here, it says it seems a little quiet because I haven't actually uploaded anything. So I'm going to click on upload now. Okay, and it's asking me if I'd like to drag and drop or choose a file. So I'm going to drag and drop as I have my window and my file ready. So here's my podcast MP3, and I'm going to drag that and drop that there. Okay, so that's just loading. So now I need to make sure the title of my podcast episode is correct. So I'm going to go back to my planning document, and I'm going to go to the podcast episode details. So I've filled this out as I would like you to fill it out as a student, to delete all of the notes and suggestions and put your ideas in. So I've got my show title, Digital Content Creation Show. Now I need my episode title. So I'm going to copy and paste the episode title from my Word document. Pop that in there. Now I'm going to choose an appropriate genre. So it's not music, so I'm going to go into the audio category. I think learning best describes the genre of my podcast, as I'm trying to teach people how to create a good podcast introduction segment. So you guys might choose entertaining or gaming or something else that better matches the subject or the topic of your particular podcast and podcast episode. So next it's asking me to add some tags. So tags will help people to find my podcast. So the sort of keywords that people might be searching when they're looking for a podcast episode like mine. So I've come up with some tags already. So the tags for my podcast episode will be words such as podcast introduction, podcast production, podcast planning, podcast editing, Adobe Audition for podcasts, etc. So I'm going to copy these, pop them in here. And now I'm going to put in the description for my podcast. So I've written a description for my podcast episode. I've tried to keep it exciting. I've tried to keep it engaging, so people read the first couple of lines when it's displayed. People will have a good idea of what the episode is about and find it intriguing and interesting and click to have a listen. I'm going to copy my podcast description and pop that there. So I have my title, genre, tags and description. Now you guys have already created some artwork for the podcast show, which is fantastic. That's all I'm asking you to do for the assessment. But if you are a little bit extra like me and you wanted to create some artwork for your podcast episode, SoundCloud does let you have a thumbnail artwork for each episode as well. So not all podcast shows platforms might do this, but SoundCloud does, because of the sort of nature being a sort of a music streaming service. So I've uploaded my episode artwork, everything's ready, and I can click save. Okay, all done. So now if I go back to my profile, you'll see my profile and my first podcast episode. So let's have a little listen. Hello and welcome to the DCC podcast show, where we discuss digital content creation for first year students. There we go. So obviously you guys will have your full podcast episode. I've just created an introduction just as a file so I can make examples for you. So finally, I just want to show you how to grab the link for your podcast episode so you can put it in your podcast planning report document. So if you click share, you'll see that SoundCloud gives you a link. So you can just copy that link, go to Microsoft Word, go to the home page. So here you would put your student number and, I put it in earlier, the podcast feed. So just format that so it's a bit nicer. Okay, so you might want to check at this point by sending this URL to a friend or a family member by email. Ask them to click on it and make sure it takes them through to your SoundCloud account and that they can hear and access your podcast episode. That way you have peace of mind that when you put your link in your Word document, both Ollie and I can access your podcast as it's hosted on SoundCloud and actually have a listen and also see that you've met all of the requirements in terms of recording, editing, mixing, creating the right file type and uploading, because that's what digital content creation is all about. It's about the planning, the creating, and actually the promoting and the broadcasting. So there's no point having great digital content if no one can see it or access it. So we have to learn about the correct file types and how to upload and share things. So hopefully this video has been very useful and has answered a lot of questions and gives you a step-by-step process for you to be able to publish your podcast episode in fulfillment of your final assessment for digital content creation.